Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Star Wars Universe Podcast. Today we're talking about Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 5. We're talking about the return of some favorite characters. We're talking about learning new things about the child, and why is Timothy Zahn smiling? All that and more after a commercial break, over which we have no control. Welcome back. I'm Matthew. I'm your host. I'm joined today by a great group of Mandalorian fans. Jeff, Ashley, and Paul are all here to talk about this episode. How are we all doing today?
We are chaos.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Bueno.
Yeah, I had not expected the episode where Ahsoka Tano does show up and her to not be the biggest reveal of the show.
Right.
It was a throwaway line, but I'm just going to get started there. Do all of you know, or do any of you know, the significance of the mention of Grand Admiral Thrawn?
Yes?
No.
I don't know that that's necessarily a throwaway line.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I mean,
Because she had some intensity on it. She has some real stank on that. Where is Grand Admiral Thrawn?
Grand
There
Admiral
was much anger
Thrawn,
in her.
question mark in my notes.
Yeah, I was super happy to see Ahsoka Tano here, although it had been spoiled for me, and...
I mean, the episode title was a little bit of
It kind of gave it away.
Oh, I didn't see what was the episode title.
Jedi.
The Jedi.
Okay, fair. I just saw a lot of people post things like, no spoilers, but, and then a picture of Ahsoka Tano. And I was like, come on, folks.
That's not what no spoilers means.
Yeah. We have to have a discussion about that.
Let me just say something about Thrawn, because that's what I honestly walked away most excited
Somebody
about. For
tell
those who
me.
don't know, not long after Return of the Jedi, a set of books was written. They're called the Heir to the Empire trilogy by Timothy Zahn. And as far as I know, these were the first of the Star Wars novels that really expanded the universe. It may well be that there were others before then, but I think these were the first that really hit mass market and are often regarded as some of the most important, some of the first.
Yeah, there definitely were some before that, and we'll talk about that in a moment.
Sure. In them, they introduced a character called Grand Admiral Thrawn. And he was this fascinating character who learned all about characters he learned all about other races through their art and was able to be this absolute military genius and has become a huge fan favorite. And when it was announced that what's now regarded as the Legends canon, these Star Wars novels, was not going to be considered canonical by Disney going forward, that I think was for many people one of the biggest disappointments, is that we would never see Thrawn on screen.
Yeah, we lose Thrawn. Oh, no.
Right.
Exactly. And he has been brought back in some of the animated stuff, but this is the first time we've ever heard him even mentioned in live action, let alone giving an idea that he's going to be a major part of the plot. So we'll get to a full discussion of the show, but I just needed to start there because I was like, okay, we have Ahsoka, great. That's back. That's great. That's great. And honestly, like a couple episodes ago when we were speculating about the future, I had a thought of like, what if we get Thrawn back? And conversation went crazy. I didn't get a chance to mention it. But oh my God, I'm so excited to see where they go with that.
I think it's so funny. We were watching the episode and like we're talking the entire time about like the costuming and like how beautiful Ahsoka is. Like Rosario Dawson looks so great as Ahsoka Tano. And then all of that went out the window when the name Thrawn was brought up. Mm-hmm. You're just like, screw all of that discussion. I don't care about the wig on the magistrate anymore. We got to talk about Grand Admiral Thrawn.
But can we talk about that wig for a second?
It was pretty bad. Ahsoka's costume was dead perfect, and I think as one of you pointed out, all the budget went to her because the magistrate's wig was just so bad.
Yeah.
She looks so beautiful.
Yeah. It was like every ounce of makeup that went onto her, like not just her face and head either, like her entire body, because she kept having that like she took off her robe and like had her shoulders showing, and I was like, man, that's nice. Like, this is the Bay.
Have we switched bays, Jeff? Have we switched bays?
Maybe I don't know. We'll see.
This is Jeff's version of cancel culture. He decided there's enough about Bay, the problems with Cara Bay or such and the actress, but now that Cara Dune, sorry, but now that we have a new Bay, we can move on.
Yeah, we can move forward now. Like there was, you gotta hold on to one branch before you let the other one go.
Fair.
if you have Ahsoka as a recurring character, then you could do whatever you want in the rest of the series.
Yeah,
You're right.
I just hope they do. I feel like every time they have these awesome guest star characters, it's for one episode, and then they just move on. I'm like, no.
Yeah, no, go back.
I didn't want it to get all tied up so quickly.
I feel like they're setting her up as, particularly with the link to Thrawn, as this long-term, very important character.
Oh, I hope so.
Though I think you're right that in this season, maybe we'll see her one more time, but maybe not. But that
Yeah,
she'll probably...
This was just planting the
exactly
seeds.
Sort of like the what was it, episode 4 of season 1 with Cara Dune.
right. Cara Dune, and also This Is the Way Man. What's it? Gruel? No.
Creel?
Queel. Thank you.
Queel.
Yeah, I mean both
He's
of
the
them.
I have spoken man.
Right. Oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm a total idiot.
That's what you meant, right?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, yeah.
I do know Star Wars. I promise. I just get words mixed up.
It's like this is the way man is Mando. That's
Yeah.
Is literally the main character.
he's in all the episodes.
But so far, we've seen that as world building, is that they'll introduce a character or like Grief who comes back up when it's relevant, but then often disappears. But when he got on that ship without Ahsoka, I definitely had the same feeling, Ashley. I was like, no, let her stay the rest of the season at least.
You said you were going to do it.
So we didn't see what. Yeah. So okay, I've got stuff to say about that. But before we get to that, like we don't see what she did with the magistrate, right?
Correct.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe she's gonna hang around and try and get some
Get more
information out of her brain
Jedi torture?
with Yon Force. Yeah, a little Jedi interrogation
With Yon Force.
With-
You pull your own fingernails back.
I mean, she did learn from Anakin how to interrogate someone,
she's
so
like,
that was a pretty pivotal Clone Wars episode early on. Although
I love though that she like brought that up. Like I've seen what what emotions and connection do to the best of us. And I was
Right.
like,
Yeah.
oh
was he
snap!
though? But
Is he a little
Yeah,
Sith
right?
Lord already?
Well, I mean,
I don't
that's one
know.
of the things that the show set up so well, I thought, is, I'm sorry, when I say the show, I mean, in Clone Wars and Rebels, where Ahsoka was introduced and really developed, one of the plot lines they really do well is Ahsoka, like, at first thinking, like, yeah, Anakin's the best Jedi. He knows it, he gets it. And then slowly starting to recognize that maybe his perspectives and the rest of the Jedi are not that great. And her eventually coming to terms with the fact that he does become Darth Vader. Spoilers for original Star Wars, sorry.
Yikes. Wow.
spoilers for
Spoilers for
Return of
Empire.
the Jedi.
Yeah, Empire actually, but or
Yeah.
either one. But yeah, and so that hearing her say that, I mean, I got chills. Like it was just such a great moment from her because she's seen all sides of that.
Yeah.
I did think it was weird though that she kept calling herself a Jedi and kept calling the others the Jedi because, as we talked about before, she did very ceremoniously like walk away from the Jedi. I think because go ahead.
Well, I would just say I don't think she called herself a Jedi.
No, she
But
didn't.
what she did is, which bothered me, she never corrected him on it. But she never said, I am a Jedi. Just like Mando wasn't like, oh yeah, I'll go kill that Jedi for you. He was just like, all right, tell me where she is.
Yeah.
He's like, I didn't agree to anything.
He's the one
Yes.
who said a Mandalorian and a Jedi, right?
Correct. And she was like,
And she says the Jedi Order has fallen. She never mentions that she herself walked away from it. But yeah.
exactly.
That's also true.
So maybe that'll come up down the line. Maybe that's one of the reasons she didn't want to train him as a Jedi, because she's like, well, I'm not a Jedi, so how am I going to train him as a Jedi? Although I would argue maybe that would be better to train him not as a Jedi, just like as a Force user, like, I don't know, maybe have some perspective like what you've gained over the decades.
I mean, we do know in universe that one Jedi did try to attempt to train some people, and it didn't go so well. So
Yeah. That's still not canon for me.
yeah, that's fair. That's
And in fact, one of my biggest fears of The Mandalorian is getting further down the line and kind of, like, that's kind of the story that I would have liked to see after Return of the Jedi. Like,
Right.
in terms of a sequel trilogy. And, I mean, I love the characters in the new ones, but I don't really love the story and its place, how it fits with the other stories. And also, I think there's a lot of just complaints about how it was kind of disjointed because it had all different writers and directors and everything. But, it's like, how are you going to kind of get from here to that point? Like, is Grogu gonna meet Luke?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. And will he be
funny.
played by Stan Sebastian?
Stan Sebastian.
Sebastian Stan. There was a comma in there. You just didn't hear it.
Oh, okay,
I heard
there
it.
you go.
I'm not even mad because that led me to the best thought ever. Guys, we need a spin-off series that's like a high school Saved by the Bell sort of thing, except it's in the Jedi Academy.
Yeah.
Oh God.
And Luke is the headmaster. We never actually see him. We just hear him on the intercom.
Does this mean Grogu is Screech?
Yes.
So I have like questions. So does that mean that where Grogu was at the Jedi Temple during the time when like Anakin and all of them were there, so the people who trained him would have been Yoda and like Mace Windu and everybody?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Oh,
Yeah.
'Cause
I love that.
He's 50 years
my read.
old.
And did he get like snuck out on that fateful night when Anakin?
That's what it sounds like to me. That's
Yeah.
my read
Okay.
for sure.
Which doesn't feel right to continuity. I mean, till this point, we've really seen him be like barely a toddler, at least in his own development, and that's generally before they would get to the Jedi Temple. As well as it's just one more of those like, how is this then like never mentioned as Yoda and Obi-Wan are talking about what should happen afterwards, and there's always going to be those continuity holes.
There being a single other Jedi left besides like Luke and potentially Leia feels like it doesn't quite square up with the original trilogy. You know what I mean? It's like, where was Ahsoka?
Yeah.
During, like, say, Empire Strikes Back,
Yoda specifically saying like there is another because he can sense one more Jedi.
Right.
He knows the story.
Exactly.
But also,
There is several others. Like,
But what do you think of the story of that Grogu is not a child? I mean, he is a child, but it's not just that he's a child who is learning his powers, but that he is like afraid to use his powers because of what's happened to him.
I think that's awesome. Like, that gives so much more depth to his character. Like, originally we were just looking at him as like, oh, it's a baby and babies are cute and look at him doing baby things. But now it's like, it's, I go back to the Empire introduction of Yoda, and you're like, oh yeah, Yoda was kind of an imp. So like all of this tracks.
right.
And like, he just does whatever the hell he feels like because like, why not? But then like, we learn that he's seen all of this, all the war and all the destruction and hate and all the, he's had people hunting him, so he's had to hide himself. Like, it makes a lot more sense now why he is the way that he is, because if he can convince people that he's just a little baby, please don't hurt me, then all the better for him.
So he's like Baby Yoda Dexter, kind of.
No, God,
Yes.
I can kind of
plunges
get
a
that,
lightsaber into your chest.
He'll do
but
it.
I'm not. If the idea is I'm going to hide these powers, I'm only going to use them when my caretaker is in mortal danger, or something else is really bad, or I just really want those blue cookies. That doesn't
Macarons.
quite line up for me.
He did choke out Cara Dune for like a lot less than that.
That's right.
I mean, that's my caretaker's in danger. That's important.
In an arm wrestling contest?
Okay, maybe he doesn't quite understand what's going on there.
I think he's like a toddler with PTSD who's also super powerful or potentially super powerful Jedi,
Yeah, that tracks.
Which is, I feel like I don't have a frame of reference for that.
That's fair. That's fair.
I don't know what that's supposed to look like. It makes a lot of sense to me. The whole interaction between Ahsoka and Grogu felt so kind of bittersweet to me.
Mm-hmm.
There was all the cuteness, but there's also all the sadness from hearing his backstory, but then also knowing all of her story, and I felt like his character got way deeper in terms of, and I feel like this season has actually kind of communicated that some, in terms of, although at the same time it was like, why didn't you use the Force with the spiders? Like, why?
I'm
Why
with
do you do
Yeah,
it?
why with the spiders?
But like, I do buy the story, I mean, So this is happening about 30 years after Revenge of the Sith, right? So that means Grogu would have been about 20 when he was hidden, you know. So being 20, and I mean, maybe he was a toddler then. Like, different species age differently. Maybe since he was 2, he's looked like this, and in another 2 years he'll look like an adult Yoda-looking thing, you know. Right. I can buy that at literally the age of 20 he was being trained, even if he doesn't communicate in words quite the same way. The fact that he's so progressed in the Force, and that, you know, he can communicate with Ahsoka in a way he can't communicate with Mando, right? So back then, he would have been able to communicate with Jedi. They would have been able to communicate with him in a way that he wouldn't have been able to communicate with anyone else. And it seems like there are so few of this species. There's like Yoda, Grogu, and Yaddle, basically, as far as I'm aware, that... you know, it would be like, oh yeah, let's train them if they're very Force sensitive, and maybe it'll be a slow, like, centuries long process. Who knows, right? But I can buy that he, you know, learned a lot then and was a kid, and then got hidden and then got kidnapped, and it was a little unclear how all that was, and I think it was deliberately unclear. And the point is, it's unclear to Grogu because it was very traumatic. And then Mando basically saved him and treated him like, you know, a person. After a while anyway, and and now, you know, he's still kind of hesitant about using the powers, but like, if he like really wants those macarons, like, you know, it's like, I mean, food and protecting Mando seem like his priorities, right? I think they're macarons.
It's macarons.
It's macarons. That is the Prime Minister of France.
Yeah,
because they're
I'm
not
pretty sure
macaroons,
a macaron and a
right?
macaroon are different things. And while I'm worried sometimes that we'll get called out for false details about Star Wars, I will say here, I am very comfortable acknowledging this is not a French pastry podcast. So if we get those details wrong, who the hell cares? Go on.
Right, but
I'm going to have a hard time calling him Grogu now. I love Baby Yoda. Like, I have to get ready for the transition.
Fair enough. I want to make a meme that's got him with that Heisenberg hat on, saying, like, say my name.
That'd be great.
So we could take opposite ends of this debate.
And that does track, though. I can definitely see the idea that, you know, his species develops differently, and that he acquires a good deal of intellectual capacity before he becomes verbal, you know, and just the way his species develops.
I mean, Yoda never quite starts talking like everybody around him.
That's also true.
You know? So.
Oh, God, I can't wait till he starts doing that.
If he's got the mental facilities of somebody who is 50, like if he can communicate and see and understand everything around him like a regular freaking person, then why was he eating the eggs of a sentient being?
You know, I think
he doesn't care. I mean, he eats things alive. Like, you know.
He's hungry.
He definitely has some trouble understanding what Mando says. So I think there's definitely a some language comprehension issues there on both sides.
Ahsoka is like, he know.
Yeah.
Yeah, he knows.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
He just doesn't.
But he just doesn't give a shit.
Doesn't want to do it.
They were delicious.
I do agree with you about the bittersweetness of that moment. There was one moment where they were, communicating Ahsoka and Grogu, and it was dark, and there was just that lamplight, and there was just like one or two bars of one of the pieces of Jedi music from the original movies, and I was just so touched by it. It was just this beautiful moment of like, for just this one moment, the connections of the Jedi are alive again. I think that was. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I think that was the music that they used in Dagobah, right, when Yoda was dying or giving Luke like his last words.
I think so. Yeah, I hadn't placed it, but I think that's right. Yeah.
Which I had seen titled as Leia's theme, but it was definitely used in that spot. So.
When it's something Jeff and I had commented on while watching it, when we were doing a live watch, I got such strong Dagobah feelings from the whole planet. You know, it's all very kind of green tinted. It's all misty and dark. All this vegetation everywhere. I
mean, former vegetation, creatures. A lot of it, right?
Well, yeah, it's also true.
It's been very deforested. Yeah, I think that was deliberate. I think, you know, they're probably going for that vibe quite deliberately, I would imagine.
I like that Mando sounded like me. He was like, go use your laser swords. They're not going to mean anything. I was like, laser swords. I loved it.
Yeah.
I feel like you have a strong connection to Mando.
Yeah.
Ashley is because he's the guy who knows nothing about Jedi, and he's just kind of like bumbling through it as he goes.
And I mean,
like,
the Mandalorians,
"Hit me."
too. He knows what he's been told by the Mandalorians he was raised by about the Mandalorians, but not the larger history.
Well, and that's a question
yeah.
I wanted to throw out. So for both Jeff and Ashley, as people who don't know all the stories of Ahsoka Tano the way Paul and I do, what was your take on getting to see this character for the first time?
Well, I did that day.
pretty.
Yeah, I did that day where I watched like 10 hours of Clone Wars. I just kind of I jumped around.
Yeah.
But I got a real good feeling of who she was because I was like, you know what? I feel like I should learn. I should just like try to get on everyone else's level here. Like put in the work, watch them, and
Put in the work.
I did. Yep, and her double lightsabers. Oh, like everything was perfect.
I love the sound that they made.
I know.
Like when she activates them.
Yeah.
Like just
The
the sound of that
cinematography of this
lightsaber
episode.
was so good.
Oh, the cinematography was gorgeous. That one scene in the alley where she lights it up real slow.
Oh yeah, and like draws them apart.
Yeah.
Whoa.
She lights and she ignites and puts out her lightsabers more than anyone ever with lightsabers. I
that.
think
So
like
smart.
in this
They're basically
episode,
like
probably as many
flashlights.
times as all the Clone Wars episodes put together. Like,
Ninja.
Well, that's so great about her is that she knows that like these are a beacon. These
Right. Yeah.
these point me out in the darkness. If I don't have these on, I disappear. And
Yeah.
she used that to her advantage, and it became so scary for the other guys.
yeah, it was great.
One of the best parts about this episode was that it was basically a horror movie in kind of the way it was
Yeah.
shot. You know, of like
for the villains.
yeah, exactly for the
Right.
villains.
Yeah.
But that whole thing of like you never quite see Ahsoka. Like you see her just these flashes of her moving past and the light stuff you're talking about. It was just one of the best directed and best shot episodes. I think Ashley, you talked about how good the cinematography was.
It reminded me of like the old ninja movies, like Ninja Assassin,
Yes.
Ninja Vanish.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, and not just because of the way that she was moving, but like all of the townspeople looked like they were of Asian
And
descent.
they were, running along the rooftops.
The architecture is decidedly not Western. The leader, the magistrate, was wielding a spear and had a very Eastern fighting style that she was using with it. Like it's all kind of pushing in that direction of it being like a 47 Ronin kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's sort of like this Ronin. Actually, no, that's exactly it. Just the Ronin fighting the magistrate. Holy shit, you guys! I found
This
it.
is our ninja episode. We had our Western. We had all of our. This is our theme.
and Ronin
Yeah.
is 100% Ahsoka. In terms of she leaves the Jedi.
She's literally a Ronin. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, if Jedi or samurai, which they're not exactly, but
no, they are.
it's a pretty close. Yeah.
for sure.
But the way that we're talking about the cinematography, I love that the only things that really lit Ahsoka through this episode were her lightsabers. Like there was the one lamp when she was kind of like force talking to Grogu, but like any other time you saw her face, and if it was lit by like good lighting, it was her lightsabers on, and it was so. Like it was so awesome. Like the VFX team in this episode, like they deserve all of the money. All like every round of applause you can give them. They did an amazing job.
And lighting crew. Some of that I'm sure is live lighting. As someone who's worked very briefly in lighting, I gotta stick up for them. One thing I'll say is that I find the credits very frustrating on Disney Plus. Because the credit scenes are so awesome on The Mandalorian, and they show all that, but then it cuts to the like black screen credits with like all the details and stuff, and it just makes it super tiny, and it's so hard to go back because then it goes out of the tiny thing, but then it goes back to the tiny thing. It's incredibly frustrating to me.
The Disney Plus app is other than CBS All Access, I think the worst of the streaming apps right now. Like it
I
just
have
does
to-
not do a lot of things that I like.
Reinstall it like 3 times a week.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah, get it together, Disney Plus. How big does your goddamn yacht have to be? Put it in your app.
But just in terms of Ahsoka herself, though, even the fighting form that she uses, which they talk about in the show, is kind of unconventional for the Republic at that point, but draws on like some of the different forms, especially Form 4, within the Jedi ideas. But because she doesn't just fight with two lightsabers, she fights with one in the sort of overhand instead of underhand hold, and that's the shorter one. And they show her doing that at the very end. In that fight, she has that kind of weird stance of holding only one lightsaber, like overhand, out, pointing outward from her. That's exactly from what she does all the time in the show. So I was so happy to see them do that.
Yeah. And you noticed the magistrate saw that happen and was like, what in the hell?
Uh-oh.
Like, it's getting real, you guys. I still, I don't understand why she is okay with just like, all right, let's sit down and have a fight against this Beskar spear-wielding lady who is not force-sensitive at all. Like, just force pull the spear, and then now you've got her.
I just was screaming that at the TV. Just push her into the pond.
Use your force powers?
Yeah.
Yeah, just use your force powers, and you win.
You let your lightsaber get thrown in the water.
Yeah, when that happened, I was like, really?
Yeah, right?
Ahsoka, really? But
come on.
So to comment on the magistrate for a moment, Morgan Elspeth, I think is the character's name. She's played by Diana Lee Inosanto, who's an actress, writer, stunt woman, daughter of Dan Inosanto, who worked with Bruce Lee extensively, was in Game of Death, and
oh wow!
And so she can fight.
Yeah.
I mean, she's been trained in, Jeet Kune Do by one of the, three main teachers of Jeet Kune Do after Bruce Lee's death. And, so, she was there, whatever you think of her wig, I didn't personally notice, but I'll defer to,
I'm sorry.
Your expertise.
The official
I'm a
hairstylist.
I'm a hairstylist, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll even say 30 minutes in, Ken was like, ugh, that wig is terrible. I was like, babe. Good for you.
But Paul, you were saying?
Basically just that. I think as far as a fighter and as far as stunts, I think she did a great job with that. I do think it's sort of it is always a thing. It's okay, you're going to have a Jedi fight a person with a spear, It feels, the thing is when you make your heroes that powerful, there is a point at which it's why are you going around doing all, just force yank everyone to the ground, or throw them up in the air and then hit them when they come down. It's they definitely don't use all of the all of their powers all the time.
I think the thing with that though is that she is such a great fighter and such a great stunt person. Mm-hmm. She's up against Rosario Dawson, who is decidedly not.
Right.
So
I'm sure they had stunt doubles for, although I don't see the, I'm forgetting her name at the moment, but who did Ahsoka stunts in season 7 of the Clone Wars. But
because it was live capture.
Yeah. They did motion capture.
Well, yeah, if they didn't have her for that, then you've basically just got Rosario Dawson or whatever stunt double she has. Mm-hmm. But it's difficult to portray a good fight and good acting from one person.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And having the magistrate be such a great fighter, if they stayed on the two of them, because it kept flashing back to Mandalorian and Kyle Reese guy staring each other down.
Well, that's why they did that.
Right.
And they intercut there so that they could, do the jump cuts. But I get that you wanted to have a good fighter in the, she's a good fighter. You wanted to have a good fight for her, but it just kind of felt silly as far as the character for Ahsoka to just okay, I'll humor you and have this fight.
For me, there were two things there. One is that I agree. I thought that felt a little unbalanced, but this has been a problem throughout Star Wars. In the Clone Wars TV show, we see Jedi take on armies of thousands of droids, with no real problem, never breaking a sweat. And then we see, groups of 5 clones kill Jedi in Order 66, and it never quite lines up. So And then Star Wars is not unique to that. I mean, the producers have talked about how the show WandaVision is going to try and attempt to explain how Wanda's powers are wildly all over the map. And we've said that about a lot of characters for sure. The thing, honestly, that I got out of it, which I agree with, may be kind of a clumsy way to show this, but I thought it told us something very important, which is that a lightsaber can't cut through a Beskar.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they demonstrated that by so I didn't actually have any issues with that fight at the end, but when Ahsoka just attacks Mando, and
just out of nowhere.
Grogu was sitting there. So I'm like, it's kind of the, we want to show these two characters fighting because we think it'll be fun, and we can show you that lightsabers don't cut through Beskar because we need that later in the episode. For that fight to make any sense.
And I'll be honest, you say it now and it clicks. It didn't click for me in that moment, so maybe that's why they wanted the second scene. But you're right, it was shown there.
Cool. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely thought the first one was to set up the second one. Because it's like when that happened, I was like, oh, what's he blocking these lightsabers with? Wow, I guess that stops that. So then when she couldn't just cut through the staff, it was like, yeah, okay, that was established. But now, now we know that. So if he runs into, I don't know, Maul or something.
Well, no, the Darksaber.
Moff Gideon with the Darksaber.
It's going to be the Darksaber.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Yeah.
The Darksaber is not going to be able to cut through it because it is actually a lightsaber. It's just gross looking.
Well, it makes sense because if the fundamental part, or at least a fundamental part of the Mandalorian history is their fights with the Jedi, of course they would develop an armor that was laser sword proof,
Right, or they were the only ones who weren't kind of conquered by the Jedi or whatever, or didn't feel like they had to bow down to them or
because
join
they
their thing.
had Beskar or whatever.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, to me, it seems like it's a natural resource, right? Because you can melt it down, so it seems like it's some sort of, I don't know, nth metal type,
unobtainium
vibranium type thing,
yeah,
whatever.
Exactly.
And it seems like it's their natural resource, but I don't know whether we got more of that
is
in
the
something
final
else.
run.
Right, exactly.
Well, okay, so we talked about Moff Gideon. This lets me get back to Admiral Thrawn. Let me I was going to ask if people think about Thrawn and Gideon, if this is going to be two separate things. But let me just start here. Did anyone besides me know a lot about Admiral Thrawn going into this?
No.
Okay.
I don't. I know the basic story.
Yeah.
And from you talking about him and from my friend Adam talking about him 25 years ago. But...
Yeah, and I will say he comes up again in an animated show that, Paul, I think you have not seen. But he's definitely a lot less known than Admiral Thrawn, than Ahsoka. So I was curious to see what the reactions. But okay, so if all we know about him is that he's this very powerful Grand Admiral, but that is very much in a position in the Empire.
Right.
Is this a separate thing from Moff Gideon? Do we think Moff Gideon's working for him or working with him? What do you all think how this is going to tie together?
I would really like to see Gideon and Thrawn be separate but equal, I guess. I want to see them... Oh, God, not to use the old school racist term there. Sorry. I want them to be kind of on each other's level, like separate warlords, because you remember last season they said all these local warlords, the power vacuum they wanted to take over. I want them to be in charge of their own little ex-Empire fleets, and they both have their this is the way, right, of how the Empire should go, and how it should be developed moving forward. And then they come into conflict, but it's kind of an enemy of my enemy sort of thing. So they're nipping at each other, but also trying to fight Mando and Ahsoka. That would be so great.
I like that idea. I think we're more likely to get I think Gideon is probably beneath Thrawn, would be my guess. But I don't know exactly how Moffs and Admirals...
what's the structure?
Right, exactly.
I mean, we saw some of that in Rogue One, and that... Because I believe a Moff is a political position, not a military position. And in the Empire, the two are very linked, but they're not quite the same.
Right. So I feel like we're going to see some politics there for sure.
Yeah.
And maybe there will be some maneuvering and maybe some betrayals and whatever. Because, it's the Empire. Bad guys do that, right? But we'll... I like the idea of having these kind of separate little... post, ex-Empire factions kind of scrambling for power and sort of see where that goes.
One thing
they're like gang leaders.
Yeah.
Right.
One thing I will say from the old lore is that in those books, one of the things that Grand Admiral Thrawn does is to find a clone of a Jedi, and that the clone is somewhat more unstable, and so is turned somewhat towards the dark side, and thus is willing to work with Thrawn to rebuild the Empire. And there's all sorts of stuff there about the tension between the two of them, and it's one of the best parts of those books. I highly, highly recommend those books to our listeners. But so we do have, at least somewhere in the Star Wars literature that Thrawn comes from, the idea that Thrawn is very interested in the idea of clone Jedi or of clone Force users. And so that could really interestingly tie in with what we learned last episode about this idea to sort of use the child to possibly make clone Jedi users or something like Force users. What I would love is if the plan is actually to make Force using clones, but that Moff Gideon wants the Force powers for himself. That'd be a really cool conflict between the two of them.
Yeah, that would be a nice little kind of maneuvering sort of, thing happening. It sounds to me like they've taken a fair amount from the Legends, whatever you call it, series. But that obviously they've adapted it and it's not canon per se, but that a lot of what is going to be used going forward is inspired by it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then the point I wanted to make earlier was that I hope that they're paying Timothy Zahn because they're not paying Alan Dean Foster for his...
Oh, yes. Tell that story. It's brief, but it kind of gives the 30 seconds of that.
Yeah, basically, there's a guy, Alan Dean Foster, successful writer, who wrote the original Star Wars book, which is credited to George Lucas, but, he ghost wrote it, which should be pronounced with a silent ghost. But he also wrote several other books in the Star Wars universe, and Disney acquired the rights to them, but their claim is that they have... What is their claim? I mean, whatever. Basically, that they say they have the rights, but not the liabilities or the responsibilities, which that's not how copyrights work. So they're trying to pull some big corporation stuff to basically just hose, the writers of content that they're still putting out there and still profiting from. So they need to pay him, and I hope they're paying Timothy Zahn and all the other writers of books of content that they've acquired. So just thought I'd throw that in there since we're talking about the novels.
Wow.
Yeah, from the little I know, I mean, there's a whole bunch of new material that's been coming out about Thrawn, among other things. Like, I first learned that he was coming back when I was working at a game store, and there's the game, there's a couple of Star Wars board games that are all basically about, miniature warfare using the ships. And Thrawn's particular Star Destroyer is called the Chimera, and that toy was made along with a little miniature figure of him, action figure of him.
Right.
So I was like, oh my god, I think...
Toy spoilers.
Oh, it was terrible working at a toy store for that, because they would do that. Like, the bomber that's used in the second sequel, Last Jedi, it came to our store a month before, and we're all like, what the fuck is this? And then I saw it on the screen. I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, I think he is being consulted and being a much bigger part of it. But it would suck if...
Oh, that's good.
I wouldn't be surprised if that happens again, because Disney and creators are not the best. But yeah, so what are the last things we can say about this episode before we start to wrap up?
Paul, didn't you want to say something about how Ahsoka just kind of didn't keep her promise?
Oh, yeah, so I've got several points, but I'll go one at a time, and then we can go around in a circle, and then I'll just keep going, because I have a bunch. One was that nothing about Ahsoka testing and then not training Grogu really made much sense to me.
Agreed.
It, when she agreed to train him, okay, so why is she going to test him and then not train him? Did she already know she wouldn't train him? Or was she like, oh, now I see this attachment, now I don't want to train him? I mean, she already knew that he had a lot of fear and all that. So that's that old Jedi nugget of stuff that I think we have a lot of thoughts on that you can go back to previous episodes and hear.
Yeah.
But basically that it's maybe not the best, some of the Jedi rules. But then she also left the Jedi, so one would think maybe she doesn't carry all of that with her. But at the same time, she saw what happened to Anakin, so okay, fine, maybe. But then she agrees to train him if he goes and does this thing with her, which I feel it's kind of like, well, isn't training him kind of higher stakes than whatever you're doing here? I don't know. You know, like, if you really take this principled stand on not wanting to train him, then I think you should stick with it and maybe explain the situation with, you know, with this village or whatever. And like, she probably could have gotten in herself. I mean, her plan was obviously to do it herself, right?
Right.
So making that agreement, but then he goes to get him, right? Then Mando goes to get Grogu, and it seems like she's going to train him, but then she shows up and she's like, yeah, but no. And so that whole thing felt a little like maybe she kept changing her mind. I don't know, but I didn't totally. That's the only thing in this episode I'd say that I didn't really love.
And then where is she
It didn't
sending
totally make
them?
sense to me.
Somewhere to go put him on a stone?
Typhon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Typhon.
Yeah, he's going to go to the top of the mountain and decide his own future. Which, hey, I mean, I'm down with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that seems like a good idea. But, like, maybe you should have led with that. Been like, this is the way.
Yeah.
Right. And Typhon is a planet that's mentioned in the Clone Wars. I believe that they did some, this whole thing about it being important to the Jedi Order. So that's not something they made up out of whole cloth. But
right.
I do
That's
agree.
another kind of reveal. Right?
I do agree with you, Paul, that it felt a little like they wanted to get the character in, but then just needed to not keep the character in. Which I gotta understand. I mean, to some extent, like, if you would think the show takes the progression it should take, it kind of ends at this point. Because, like, Mando's like, cool, I'm done.
Right.
And obviously you don't want that. It felt weird, though, to me, because it felt like there were a number of options that were never being looked at. Like, one is just, like, helping him get to his people, not training him, just giving him someone who can better understand him. Like,
Right.
Ahsoka can communicate with him a lot more. Maybe or the three of
Or
them.
at all.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, like, maybe just hang out with Ahsoka.
Just stay there
You
for
know?
a minute.
Yeah.
because especially if there had just been one or two more lines of her saying, you know, like, because you're right, Paul, she left the Jedi Order in part because she was starting to see all the problems with this idea of, like, you can't have attachments and things like that. But then in later seasons, she realizes that, I feel like Ahsoka is this perfect middle point of she thought the Jedi rules were so dumb, but then she also saw very clearly what happens when the Jedi rules were not followed in Anakin becoming Darth Vader.
Yeah.
And I just wish
what
there was-
can happen.
Right, she acted as though she were any Jedi following the rules as normal, and I needed a little more from her about that. Because I think
Yeah,
you're
me
right.
too.
The way it was played out, it just didn't make sense for her character.
Yeah. I will just throw in that she looked amazing, like, not just, like, attractive, but, like, I was just like, how are they, you know, I thought Rosario Dawson was a great, you know, casting, piece of casting, but, like, you know, I think she's great, but I was like, how are you gonna do Ahsoka live action, you know? And then I'm like, oh, okay, that's
Just
how.
like that.
You know, she had
This
just a
is the
perfect
way.
badass intro. Like, when we were talking about Cara Dune being badass, I was like, just wait for Ahsoka. Like,
Well,
you know.
and look, the Bay has passed, you know? So
Right.
Yeah. The torch has been passed.
And even like if you go to the movies, I mean, if you don't look at the animated series and you don't look at the books, and you're someone like me who's just mostly seen the movies, we don't have any female Jedi really.
Yeah.
Like there's that scene in Revenge of the Sith when they do Order 66, but if you didn't know those characters, you don't feel
Right.
you know
Ayla
what they are.
Sakura deserves more than that.
Yeah. No, it's very true. Yeah, I mean, other than that complaint, I thought Ahsoka was perfect. You know, it was such a great reveal. And, like, one thing was awesome is that Ahsoka was always one of the most kind-hearted of the Jedi. Like, she believed in the war, but she questioned it a lot. One of the reasons why she left the Jedi was how much she was bothered by the war and what the war was doing to the Jedi in terms of, like, you know, seeing living people, the clones, as cannon fodder almost. Or not even almost.
Literally.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
And then often, like, she was not willing to kill a defenseless enemy. You know, I mean, theoretically, no Jedi should, but certainly some did, Anakin especially. And that she'd often be like, she wouldn't deliver the killing blow when it was not needed. And so when there's that one moment when she disarms one of the people who's attacking her up on that up on the ridge of the castle, and he kind of like holds up his hands to surrender, and she kind of just like gives him a look like, yeah, get the fuck out of here. And he does. That moment felt perfectly Ahsoka to me, because it was that same like, I'm not going to deliver the killing blow. I'm not even going to try and arrest you or something. Just like, yeah, get out of here.
Yeah, just, okay, you give up, go.
Yeah.
And, okay, I'm going to bring this back to the thing at the fight at the end between...
I was going to as well.
...her and Elspeth, the magistrate. I think there's a reasonable argument to be made that she doesn't want to use all of her force powers. She wants to basically have a duel, right? I mean, she probably could have snuck in the middle of the night and just, like, whatever. But she's trying to get information out of her. And I think there's an argument to be made that, one, in a sort of, like, honor, whatever kind of thing, she wants to have a duel. And number two, maybe there's some element of, if I defeat this person in one-on-one combat without, using a bunch of force powers, maybe she's then going to be more willing to actually talk to me and give me the information that I need from her.
Yeah, more receptive.
Yeah.
Exactly. Whereas if I just splash her in the water or something and, like, make her staff, fly through the air to me, like, maybe she's less likely to kind of feel like she's been vanquished in battle or defeated in battle and then be like, okay, well, I'll give you the information now because, like, you beat me.
Like, I get that Ahsoka is a more honorable person than, we might have been given her powers in that situation.
Definitely me.
But the magistrate has already, like, at the beginning of the episode, proved that she was not an honorable person. She was willing to torture those innocent townspeople just because she wanted Ahsoka to go away.
I think it's like more on Ahsoka's side though, like for herself.
Yeah. I have to beat her, and it has to be honorable. Otherwise, I can't live with myself.
If it would have started to go sideways, she would have force pushed that chick through a wall. I mean, but it didn't.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing, though, is it's like, did you ever really feel like Ahsoka wasn't going to win that fight? Like, did Ahsoka ever feel like she wasn't going to win that fight? I mean,
no, she was in control the whole time.
Right? Like, she lost one lightsaber, but it's like, even if she lost both lightsabers, then she'd be like, okay, just give me your staff.
Yeah.
Like,
Swink,
then she uses the force push. But she doesn't need to because I feel like she's not in danger the same way. She says don't underestimate the magistrate, but, at the same time, I feel like she maybe not necessarily underestimates her, but correctly is like, yeah, I'm good here. Like, I don't need to do that.
Right.
Because I'm just that good.
Right.
Yeah, I like that interpretation. That makes a lot of sense.
That's fair. And that, that bit of honor about her, I wish I had known that about her from the Clone Wars. I feel like I gave her a disservice when I was like, why didn't you just?
Right.
And that makes her... No, that makes her more fitting of the role of Bae.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, and it's interesting for me, Jeff, because, I first really got to hear your voice talking about the MCU. And on the MCU cast, you're the one with the really encyclopedic knowledge. And there's been a lot of times where I would watch a movie or a TV show from the MCU and then listen to you podcast about it and realize, like, I just saw the tip of the iceberg. And so there was so much that I wasn't knowing about the character. So it's interesting to me hearing about you getting to see it from the other side and seeing how, like, that can be another interesting way to watch these things.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
It's not fallen. I think it's not good or bad. It's just different perspectives.
Yep.
How the different people with different knowledge bases have communicated with one another and learned things from each other.
That just doesn't flow as well.
I got all the laser swords I needed in this episode. I'm content.
There's a better way I can say it to Jeff. Once I was the learner, but now I am the master.
Yeah, you little Padawan.
All right. Paul, anything else on your list, or can we go to the next person?
I do have one more, but
we
can rotate,
Let's go through each person's list. What's your one last thing to talk about?
Okay, my last thing, and this was already sort of alluded to, but so I was watching this with my wife, who's Chinese American, and she was like, why are there so many Asian people here? Which then I asked if it was okay if I said that. She said that, and she was like, well, it might sound kind of racist coming from you. I was like, no, but I have a point. My point being that in the last episode, I was talking about especially how, there was such a lack of representation of, Asian people and Asian Americans, Asian Canadians in a lot of Western, American cinema, right? And TV. And to the point where then when you actually have like a reasonable amount, it can actually be surprising, right? Like it shouldn't be surprising. It's like, you're not like, oh, why are there so many like, Latino people or like whatever in a given thing? Because although, that's not to say there's necessarily great representation in any, there either. But the point being that like I was complaining about there not being enough like Asian representation, and then we get this episode where yes, most of the it seems like the villagers were all were all of Asian descent, like the actors, and then the magistrate also is, I think, at least half Filipino American, and so I just think it's great that there actually now is a large enough, like now if you had like Ming-Na Wen and then you bumped her off, I would still feel like you wasted the actress, but like at least it wouldn't feel like you had so few characters from like a given sort of group of people that that it felt like not right in that way.
Right.
I don't think she's dead.
Me neither.
Right. I mean, we all have theories about that.
But I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. She certainly has not been on screen much. And it's funny because, Paul, you're also making the argument for why we really need more Ahsoka Tano. Because, in the same kind of way of, like, introducing that one great Asian character and then losing her in Ming-Na Wen, hopefully she's going to come back. But the same way, like, we don't have enough female Jedi running around. That getting just one episode of Ahsoka Tano and then no more feels like enough,
It's not.
Yeah.
I need more.
Yeah.
Yes.
I do need more. I was okay with there not being lightsabers in this show for the longest time, but then like Ahsoka Tano showed up, and I'm like, no, this is okay.
Yeah.
I need all the lightsabers, especially white lightsabers. They were beautiful.
Oh, they were. They were so pretty. I think that just the one set, like Ahsoka would be that one that would make it okay, because like she's not the Yoda, the Obi-Wan, the Qui-Gon type of like, the Jedi and the way that they have to be, blah blah blah. Like she's not indoctrinated,
Right.
So having her be like a super realistic person, but also force sensitive, and use and be that honorable person that we're talking about, that would be such a refreshing take on somebody being Jedi.
Yeah.
Like I would wholeheartedly welcome that in this series.
I don't know if Rosario Dawson wants to do this, but I wonder if maybe they're kind of hoping for an Ahsoka that the character really takes off.
An Ahsoka Tano series?
A series or a movie?
That's
exactly what I was thinking. Oh.
I'd be so down
I
for that.
need it. I need it so bad.
One other just cool thing I noticed, and because Ashley, you pointed out that the color, that the lightsabers are white. This is a big discussion that came up a couple of years ago because they're the same color. If you remember, at the end of the Palpatine's back terrible Star Wars movie. Yeah. Some people love it. Forgive me. But at the end of that one, I'm not even going to try and say the name because I got it wrong before, and I
Rise of
just don't care.
Skywalker.
Thank you.
Just call it episode 9.
The new lightsaber hat that Rey has is white. It's no longer blue or green.
Yellow.
And there's,
it looks more yellow, but it does look like it's a similar sort of theme color.
Right. It's different. It's lighter color. It's not quite the exact same. You're right. I'm partially colorblind, so forgive me on that one.
Right.
But it's definitely not either the traditional blue or green. And I think that
red, for that matter.
Oh yeah.
Or purple, like Windu.
That's definitely not the traditional either. That's Samuel L. Jackson being like, I'll be in your movie if you give me a purple lightsaber.
But it is in canon, and it was written about more in the books. But my point just being, I think that's, again, supposed to be symbolic of her being somewhat outside of the Jedi traditions. And there is in the novels reason for that color to be another part of the Jedi Order, but it's definitely not what we've normally seen. And so I thought that was also really cool.
Right.
Yeah.
You know the story of why there's a green lightsaber? Did we talk about this in Return of the Jedi?
If I remember this, it's because the blue that they'd been using up till now didn't show up as well against the sand in Tatooine.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so they switched to green.
Wow.
And then build all this mythology around it, but it's like, the blue isn't looking good. All right, make it green. We'll fix it. We'll come up with something in post.
It is one of the reasons why I sometimes laugh. Like, I love the Star Wars lore and mythology, but every now and then I laugh at how deep into the details folks will get about, and the arguing of like, no, it has to be this because so much of it has its origins. You're right. In like, okay, all we have is a trash can that we can turn upside down to make it look like this droid. So cool. That's
exactly.
Ashley, what's one or two of your last things you wanted to touch on?
I really hope she comes back. I know this is only episode 5. We have 3 left. So I'm not getting my hopes up too much, but I cannot get enough of her. I need some more lightsabers. I love them working together, even though they're like arch nemesis. Oh, I love it. And I can't wait to see this story progress. And I just hope that they do it within the next 3 episodes and I don't want some like huge, like we just get to Moff Gideon and then this season ends. Like I need some action.
Yeah.
Like what was Ahsoka staying there for? Like she could have brought her torture victim with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, is there a reason that she needs to stay on that planet? Is she trying to rebuild their society? Like it seems that they had picked somebody else to be a magistrate already, and he seemed cool with it.
Why didn't she go with them?
He's credited as governor.
Yeah, why didn't she go with? And then we get the Ahsoka and Mando show.
Because plot, Jeff, plot.
Mandasoka!
Oh!
You know how expensive it is to
Mandasoka.
put her in that makeup and the hair and the...
Or even Mandasoka Botan. You know, I mean, why is Bo... These are my 2 biggest frustrations with the show right now. One is that, and I think we had this discussion in the live watch, I am so damn sick of the side quests. Like, it was fun at first in the first season, but when we realized, like, yet again, it was going to be Mando has to help Ahsoka with some fight against an enemy who we haven't met before. Stop, please. Yeah. Give us the actual story you're teasing this whole time. But also, I mean, Ahsoka is fighting elements of the Empire. Bo-Katan is fighting elements of the Empire. Mm-hmm. Mandalorian is like in his own way. Why are we not all getting together? You know, I don't understand why Bo-Katan stayed on her planet. I don't understand why Ahsoka is staying on this planet. It just feels like they don't want the characters together because they want it to be this Mando popping in and out, and that's fine, but then don't keep making situations where that doesn't make sense.
Well, they want to have the big everybody get together, let's round up the gang kind of team up in the last episode or 2, like they did last season, because that's, because
that's the structure of the show.
That's the structure of Mando show.
Maybe that's
the tried and true formula.
Yeah. As long as they bring him back, I guess.
Jeff, what about from you? Any 2 last points?
So I thought that when Ahsoka showed up and she cut through the trees cut through that one tree with the 2 lightsabers, and then used the chunk of tree to knock out the one guy, and then the tree falls directly on itself and then falls over. Like that was probably some of the best bit of ridiculous Star Wars physics ever.
So
and
good.
I need more of that.
Yeah, it was so good.
Because like her just cutting through everything the way that she did was so freaking cool.
Yeah, the bell.
Yeah, cutting through the bell, like cutting through the gong, the way that she did, like all of it was just so awesome. And I think that like her cutting through stuff could have been really cool if they had gone with I guess to backtrack, Paul, you mentioned that the credits portion of the show kind of pisses you off with Disney Plus, and I thought it was going to be a discussion of the concept art that they show.
I love that.
I love that so much.
The concept art that they show is awesome, but in like most of the time, it kind of follows right along with what actually happened in the show. Mm-hmm. But in this one, there were a lot of images that were not in the show. Like they were different from what the show had or from what they filmed.
Yeah.
And there was one where like Ahsoka was squaring off against the magistrate, but it was inside.
Yeah, it was like in
what
dojo
looked like almost like a dojo. Yeah. But like if they had been fighting in there, and if Ahsoka had been like cutting through the sliding doors or the paper doors would have looked so awesome.
I could go for that.
Yeah.
That would have been one of the coolest things, but they decided not to.
The first time she cut through that tree, I flashed to Obi-Wan cutting Darth Maul in half, and us not realizing until he falls down and like the two. Which again, it's ridiculous Star Wars physics, but it was just so well done.
Exactly. So like, I don't know, the art, the concept art at the end kind of made me wish for the episode that could have been, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate to say, because this was such a good episode.
Mm-hmm.
You were saying, Paul? Sorry.
So first of all, I don't really feel the same like side quest thing about this episode at all. Like really it was only episode 2 where I was like, why are we spending an episode on a planet with a bunch of spiders and this whole thing? And but aside from that, I've enjoyed the basic story at least of all of the episodes, and I don't know, I think I've kind of just accepted like this is what Mandalorian is. It's an episodic show that has threads to the main universe, and I think it's going to increase in sort of frequency, and maybe towards the end it'll feel like we're really engaging with sort of the central plot, but I feel like maybe it won't. I don't know. But I did get the feeling, now that you're saying that there was all this concept art that isn't exactly in the show, I feel like maybe they shot a fair amount more than what they showed and cut it down to the sort of 40 whatever minutes, and like it could have been an hour-long episode, and maybe there's a take where Ahsoka does say something about not being a Jedi, and they're like, oh, well, we won't put that in. And so some of the things about her training or not training, maybe some of that's editing, not just writing, because what we see at, the final thing often isn't like all the scenes that were written and shot, right? So I'd be a little curious about that.
Well, one of the pieces of art that's not related to any of the like fight scenes is Grogu. God, I was like Baby Yoda. His name's not Baby Yoda. His name's not Baby Yoda. But what else could it be?
Grogu.
It's going to take time. Grogu with his eyes closed and his hand up, and there's a bunch of dead like flower buds or dead looking flower buds in an area where a couple of them are blooming, and there looks to be light shining down on the few that are blooming. It's like he's making them come back to life.
Like that.
Or
he killed the rest of them.
Or he killed the rest.
Yeah.
And that's when Ahsoka's like, nah,
Ahsoka's like, nah, dog, nah.
Good.
But with the rest of the forest around them seeming to be dead, it makes me think that he's bringing them back alive.
We'll give the charitable view, not the the
sure,
Witcher
whatever.
view or
He's a
whatever.
Sith.
Yeah, right.
He's a Sith. I claim him.
For sure.
So like that could have been the test or the test that was written originally that the concept artist did, and instead it was here's a ball.
And I do think, and I know, Jeff, again, you talked about this before, in talking about sort of like knowing that you can't throw all the little details when a lot of fans don't know it. As much as I love it, as much as I've talked about it, the Clone Wars TV show is hardly on the level of like most of the Star Wars movies, and lots and lots of very good Star Wars fans, who I think are completely legitimate fans, have never seen them, know nothing about Ahsoka Tano. And you're making me think, like, as much as I want the version of Ahsoka Tano that is very much playing homage to her appearances in other shows, I do wonder if maybe if they had gone into some of that, it would have just confused the people who haven't seen any of that. Or if that's maybe what they did. Like, and maybe, Paul, you're right, that they did shoot some of that, and then we're like, is this going to make sense to people who've not seen Clone Wars?
This doesn't really track for plebes.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey.
I would...
Yeah.
Excuse me, hold on a second.
No, he's talking about himself. You watched 10 hours of Clone Wars.
I did.
Yeah, no, Jeff is on the bottom of this
softball.
particular totem pole.
Yeah, I'm way down here, like holding you guys up.
No, like I said, we need
I have
that.
your hand.
We need that perspective. I'll just say my last thing in closing. Now that our closings have taken more than 20 minutes, and again, I'm just going to keep.
It was
focused.
a good episode.
One of the reasons why the Grand Admiral Thrawn thing is so exciting to me, but also so interesting, is I don't think I've ever been more aware of just how good those post-quel books were, because they're the those Timothy Zahn books are about exactly what the postquels were supposed to be about what happens in the years after the Empire falls in Return of the Jedi. And Thrawn was such a good character and such an interesting character, and like that whole thing was so well done that part of me was like, watching the postquels, which, as you said, Paul, were very disjointed, maybe sort of be like, why are you doing a Snoke and now this idiotic thing with Palpatine? Just have given us Thrawn. You had a perfect enemy.
Right.
But all that is supposed to happen in the first, 15 to 20 years, or even 5 to 15 years after. Yeah. Actually, I think it's even less than that. I think that whole series takes place within 5 years of the end of the books. So I very much don't want it to be that Grand Admiral Thrawn created or was working with Palpatine or anything like that. But, they do talk about in those postquels that there has been continued fighting and there has been, continued mopping up. And so I would like it if maybe what they're leading us towards is that in the time between Return of the Jedi and A Force Awakens, there were a couple of battles and eventually the New Republic had to fight the Empire to some extent again as the mopping up, and that's where Admiral Thrawn gets taken care of.
Right.
I don't know if that's going to go, but I think that would certainly be a better direction. But that's obviously a long ways off.
Give us Chiss.
Because they still want to make more movies, right? So maybe they'll make movies like those.
Yeah.
Maybe. Isn't Taika doing the next one? What if it's an Ahsoka movie? I'd love that.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Directed by Taika Waititi.
I don't think it is, but
I know, but isn't he doing the next Star Wars movie?
I think so.
I mean, I think what they have said pretty clearly is that we're not going to get anything more in this period between, from the birth of Anakin Skywalker to the final death of Palpatine and all that. That period is now pretty locked. Although maybe not, because Mandalorian takes place within that period.
They said the Skywalker saga has come to an end.
Right.
Which I think is a way of not really saying... I mean, maybe they said more detailed things, but the way that I heard it phrased, I was like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you're giving yourself a fair amount of latitude there. We're not going to see Luke and Leia and whatever,
Right. I mean, I think what it means is that you're not going to see a movie about the New Republic fighting against Thrawn or anything like that, because General Organa would be a huge part of that. But
right, that would be the thing. It's like Leia would have to be a pivotal character there.
But you could have Ahsoka Tano's story, whatever the heck she's been doing.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So.
I'm so down for that.
Yeah. I mean, Rosario Dawson was so good at that. That whole character just made me so happy. Paul, you're right. She just nailed it. The makeup was perfect.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, thank you guys so much. There's been a great discussion. As always, fans, what do you think? What are your theories on this? How do you like seeing Ahsoka? I'm especially curious for fans who haven't seen Clone Wars, haven't seen Rebels. What did you think of Ahsoka? It sounds like here, at least, there's been wide love of her. Across that aisle, but would love to hear from you. If you're a diehard Star Wars fan and you've seen everything, let us know what you think too. What do you think is happening with Thrawn? All of this. The best way to find out ways to contact us is go to strandedpanda.com and then click on the Star Wars Universe Podcast link. That'll give our social media, as well as access to a lot of the other great things that are happening on the Stranded Panda Network, on which Ashley and Jeff are also big parts, and Paul's often a co-host. Jeff, tell us a little bit more about what's going on Stranded Panda these days.
Nah.
Okay. Well, then I'll give a plug. In a couple of weeks, a new TV show is coming, which is an adaptation of the Stephen King novel, The Stand, because this seems like a perfect time to watch a completely fictionalized tale about a global flu pandemic that wipes out 97% of the population and the battle between good and evil that happens after that.
Perfect timing.
And Ashley Coffin and I are going to be doing a set of podcasts on PandaVision all about that. So definitely check that out. Paul, what about you? I know you're in the stages of trying to get a new project off the ground or take a project you're already doing and kickstart it into a new direction. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm streaming every day at noon Pacific Standard Time on twitch.tv/ZenMadman. Various things, mostly poker at the moment, but other sort of intellectual pursuits. I am referring to poker, I guess, as an intellectual pursuit, which for me it is, but for others, it's just recreation. But feel free to come join along, check it out, give a follow, and we'll see you there.
Great. All right. Well, thank you guys all. Thank you. thank you all, folks. This has been a wonderful podcast. Really enjoyed this episode. Really enjoyed getting to talk to you all about it. And to everyone else, please write in. Let us know what you think. Have a great day.
I have spoken.
Woo-tee.
Ahsoka Tano is bae. What?
Kenobi.
Orange girls.